This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. So many Americans rely on childcare, yet the industry continues to struggle for a variety of reasons that have been exacerbated in the pandemic. Now, Connecticut got more than $330 million in federal dollars to help childcare providers, but what sustainable measures have been put in place to serve families and help keep these small businesses open? Today, Where We Live, we talk about childcare in our state. Coming up, we hear from a national organization based in Connecticut that aims to support child care workers who operate family child care centers. And we talk to Beth, the Commissioner of the State Office of Early Childhood. Are you a parent who has struggled to find child care where you live? Do you operate a child care center and have run into challenges staying open? We want to hear from you too. Our number, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. You can share a comment on our Facebook page or find us on Twitter at Where We Live. Joining us first on Zoom is Veronica Phelps. She's director of MySchool in East Hampton, Connecticut. Veronica, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So how long have you been in the early childhood field, and how many years have you been open?
I have been in the field since 1988, and I started my own center in 2001. So we're on our 20th anniversary, 21st.
So congratulations for making it that long. You've served and helped a lot of families. Would you say that this has been the most challenging time of your career? Absolutely, positively. Even from when I started and not knowing what I was doing in the beginning and learning everything at once, this is much more stressful and consuming. So talk us through what you've been experiencing in the pandemic, especially now in this last couple of months when we think about the number of children you typically served over the years and how that changed with COVID.
Well, our capacity here at my center, this will just give you a snapshot, is 80. And right now we only have 29. So we are nowhere near where we need to be. And that's, we wouldn't be open right now unless we had gotten some grants from the Office of Early Childhood. Has been really helpful in getting us funding and supplies, but apparently that's all dried up now and we're kind of left high and dry.
That's a big decline. So what does that mean for the people you employ?
Well, everyone, it's very stressful and we're not sure what to do. We're trying to do everything from expanding our program and incorporating infants and toddlers, which we haven't done in the past. We're trying to bring in parents to help us pull everything together. We're doing assessments for, are we going to even have clientele for enough to sustain us for rent and insurance and all those crazy expenses that we have. So we're trying to figure out next year. Unfortunately, our budget year starts in July. So we have this small 6 months to figure out what's going on. We might close.
When I asked you about your capacity and issues over enrollment, can you talk about that, about some of the factors that are leading to that decline, especially when we're in this surge and there have been so many quarantine periods and for families?
It is. We have a great council that we have in town. It's the East Hampton Early Childhood Ed Council, and we collaborate with the other centers that are in town. And we have one center that had to close 2 rooms, and that's huge. And then they found out they had to close another 2. So it's the between closures and parents not thinking you're reliable if you have to close and just thinking you're doing that at a whim or whatever, then they start to try to shift and go to other places, and they take away the small funding that we have as it is. We've been fortunately only to close once so far in all this insanity, but kids aren't attending that would attend because there's no vaccination for under 5. And our preschool program, our mainstay is the 3 and 4 year olds. And another hurdle is that all of the conception even of early childhood has been that it's not worth taking, having the kids even come that are wearing masks or the 4 year olds that are vaccinated. But it really is worth them attending preschool, because one of the conceptions about preschools to begin with is that it's babysitting, but it's really not. It's really getting those kids ready for kindergarten and getting them ready for the next 12 years of education. And they're learning not just the academics, ABCs, but most importantly, when they walk in the door, to go put their things away and settle in and be with your friends rather than climbing up coat hooks and knocking everything off shelves, which are where the kindergarten teachers sometimes have to deal with when they get to kindergarten if they haven't had a good preschool experience. So the perception of what the early childhood educators do is very important to why, parents are making decisions. Oh, we'll just leave them home for another year and they'll get what they need in kindergarten. They really get such a strong foundation when they come to the early childhood ed programs, and not just the 3 and 4 year olds, but also the smallers, the littler ones, the toddlers. It's a huge impact, and especially the way that we've learned now how the brain develops. Having all this experience, it's all lost. So when the kids get to kindergarten, they're going to be even further behind. So we're really trying to pull together and keep this going. It's a great thing. It's an important thing, but it seems like we're hitting a wall.
So many factors coming together at once that's causing this crisis in the childcare industry. Outside of the pandemic, thinking about even some of the factors that have kept parents at home. Maybe they're working from home because of the pandemic, or they've lost income, and that impacts whether they're able to even send children to your facility.
That's huge. That's very important. Some of the parents here, we've offered tuition discounts for people just to keep the kids that really need it in the program. And that's hard to do because we're a for-profit, and our profit margin is so low to begin with because we are childcare. And the other thing is staffing. Is we could, if we had more teachers, then maybe we could do a little bit more marketing, like I said, with expanding our program services. But we can't get qualified teachers in. And the huge thing about that is that the cost of what they're getting if they're coming out of college, kindergarten teachers average 38 and up to start, and the preschool teachers are being offered $15 to $24. It's less than half of what they're getting other places. So they're not staying. And then the qualified teachers who we have are not staying because they can get better jobs and more money working for Amazon. So that's a huge struggle too, is finding qualified teachers. The other thing is just the morale is so low because it's so stressful. The parents are suffering. The kids are small groups, so they're not learning as much as they would in a setting where you're doing group activities and having bigger social interactions. And then the staff, I worry about the mental health there too.
Where are you getting support, Veronica?
OEC has helped us hugely by having a couple of grants, and we've really stayed in the loop. They helped us get supplies in the beginning when we could not get our hands on sanitizer and masks. They had location spots where we could get them. We just went to a big one where we had all the cars lined up, and it was amazing. Then I think it was the Reserve or the National Guard was there helping, and we were able to get test kits, which are huge and, as you know, in shortage. So we've gotten most of our support from Office of Early Childhood. And we're not a nonprofit, and we're not state funded. So we are going to be the first to go. We're going to be the first subset to have to shut down and close.
You're hearing Veronica Phelps here on Where We Live, director of MySchool in East Hampton, Connecticut. That's a early childhood center, child care provider in our state who is struggling, like many, to stay open with so many factors impacting enrollment and staffing. If you're also experiencing this, we'd love to hear from you. 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Veronica mentioned the Office of Early Childhood a few times. Joining us now on Zoom is the Commissioner of the Office of Early Childhood for Connecticut. That's Beth. Welcome back to the show.
Oh, good morning, Lucy and Veronica. There couldn't be a better spokesperson for the field than you. Thank you so much for sharing your story and sharing the complexity of it all.
What are you hearing from other child care providers, Commissioner Bai, similar to Veronica's concerns and the challenges that she's going through day by day?
It is so tough out there right now for early childhood providers, and I urge your listeners to be caring to them. They have been caring for parents. They're great support to parents and to young children at what is a really difficult time. At the same time, their business models are under incredible threat. As you could hear from Veronica, they already had a very slim profit margin because parents can't really afford to pay the full cost of care. And so between concerns about the virus, concerns about families. As Veronica talked about, the stress on teachers and programs. It's really difficult out there on every level.
So when we talk about shortages or programs that have had to close, we've been on the show before since the height of the pandemic, Commissioner Bai. How bad is it today? What does the supply look like right now?
Well, our supply, we're doing really well in Connecticut because we were able to get those federal funds out quickly. Governor Lamont was really clear that he wanted the funds out to programs. He was listening to programs and hearing the challenges they faced. So we got $108 million out to programs, as Veronica said, private, nonprofit, for-profit. We think all parts of the infrastructure really matter very much. So we have lost fewer than 1%, just about 1% of licensed programs in Connecticut. That includes family child care and centers, and family child care has been a critical part of the infrastructure during the pandemic. But our capacity, so that is the number of slots available, is up about 1% since I think I did this back to 2018, just pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. But capacity doesn't mean they're open. We have at least 100 classrooms, I would guess more, across the state closed because there's not a workforce. Childcare is the lowest paid profession. It's how I got involved. Being an advocate for worthy wages is how I made my way into public policy, because I would lose teachers all the time. And it's worse now than it was 30 years ago. So we're doing really well in Connecticut, but I think you could hear in Veronica's voice that we are nearing the end. Those funds went out and they can be used for 3 years, but programs have needed them now. Family child care and centers have had to use their funds. So we were hoping, Build Back Better would have brought $168 million into Connecticut for child care alone, and that doesn't include the UPK number, the funds for universal preschool. And we were very hopeful about that, but that has taken a pause. And so now I think, to Veronica's point, we've got to listen hard to what's happening out there and respond with the resources that are available.
You mentioned President Biden's $2 trillion spending bill that would give needed money to the child care industry, and talking through with us would receive $168 million. Connecticut could receive $168 million. But can we talk about some of the sustainable measures to help people like Veronica? So when we think about declining enrollment, the fact that she said a lot of people aren't interested now in early childhood. They want to go to a profession like in the elementary or secondary level. So how do we help this industry at a time when there are so many factors pushing against it?
Yeah, there are so many factors. I do think the workforce is the biggest challenge right now, and we are working with the CSCU system, the community colleges, and the lab schools at the community colleges, which are training grounds for early childhood teacher, much like a chemistry lab is there for people majoring in chemistry. And some of our private colleges are participating as well to help encourage more people to come into the field. We're launching a workforce campaign. We have a new job board that's free to program, so they're not having to pay $75 every time they post. We've waived some of the sort of fees that really add up to programs, like the office is paying accreditation fees for programs that are seeking accreditation, and we're paying all the fees for background checks for all employees, trying to remove those barriers as best we can. And I know you have Erica Phillips here. We really believe that both the family child care networks and some of the quality supports in place for centers can help programs with problem solving and support. We're trying a lot of things, but this is a broken market, and we have to understand it's a public-private market. And so the solutions are more complex, but I think what was in Build Back Better was really the right answer. People aren't going to go into a field where you get a bachelor's and make $20 an hour when there are so many other opportunities. And Build Back Better would have brought the pay rate up to that of public school teachers. It's such a great profession. I've had such a wonderful career. I think Veronica will agree with me. but the workers in childcare have been holding up the whole system with their low wages and hard to make a profit. So what's happening over time is we get more childcare deserts because the centers are only opening where they can make a profit. So we've got to look at our subsidy system and look at our state-funded childcare programs to make sure they can sustain so the childcare desert problem doesn't get worse.
Veronica's still with us. Again, Veronica Phelps, who's the director of MySchool in East Hampton. Did you want to respond to what Commissioner Bai shared? And again, this delicate balance you're struggling with maybe staffing shortages, but also this decline in enrollment.
I am aware of the work that the OEC is doing, and I think that the legislators have to be brought in the loop so that they understand what an integral part of our society, our community, that this early childhood is. And I think that's where we need to go, because the Build Back Better was phenomenal and they dropped the ball. They dropped the ball and they need to find a way to pick it back up.
Again, you can join us 888-720-9677 as we talk about child care, so vital to families, but yet, and when we look at how our country funds child care, it's pennies compared to what some other nations around the world allocate to help families. Again, you can join us 888-720-9677 or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. Commissioner Bai, we got a question from Steve who writes, in the U.S., we seem to privilege corporations over people, and thus far we haven't seen the investment in quality childcare that other nations have made. Where are Connecticut's business leaders on this issue? Do they get the true all-in economic cost of inadequate childcare?
I really appreciate that question, and in fact, it's ironic. It's in a good way. I was on a call this morning with CBIA, who is helping us bring businesses together. Governor Lamont hosted business leaders at his house this summer to talk about childcare and how important it is, and listen to and talk to them about ways that they can help. And so both listening to their concerns, but also thinking about ways that they can help. So we are in the midst of developing a business coalition. I know I've spoken with Indra Nui a few times, who is a former CEO who really believes in childcare and is offering, support and ideas and guidance on this topic as well. So I'd say the business community is really engaged. Lego has been particularly engaged in asking what can they do to help, and the governor's very interested in connecting with business, because I think, we believe it's a bi-directional thing. Childcare helps business, and business can be a part of this childcare solution.
Meryl's calling in from New Britain. He's the director of early childhood development. Meryl, what did you want to share about this conversation we're having?
I wanted to share that yesterday we had a large group of child care providers on a Zoom meeting with Senator Blumenthal, and we put out a poll where we asked the providers, how many of you had experienced difficulty hiring staff? And we had 89% said they had. We asked how many of them have vacancies now, and it was 81%. And then we asked, how many of you are under-enrolled because you don't have the staff to staff classrooms? And we heard 57%. And then we asked, okay, if you are under-enrolled because you don't have enough staff, do you have a wait list of children? And 69% said they had a wait list, but they didn't have enough staff to run their classrooms. And then the most important one, we asked how many of them were operating below break even. And 62% of the program said they were operating below break even. We are in a better place because OEC got money out quickly, and we have kept programs from closing so far. But now that Omicron is hitting child care providers harder because it's more contagious and children are getting it, we've got an even worse problem. And it's the staffing issue which is directly related to programs not being able to pay competitive wages because parents can't pay enough to afford that total cost. That's our underlying problem, and that's why government needs to put in some money here.
Again, that's Meryl Gay, Executive Director of the Connecticut Early Childhood Alliance. Thank you, Meryl, for sharing those numbers with us. Commissioner Bai, did you want to respond?
Wow, those numbers are, I was on the call for the beginning of the call yesterday and saw the polls go up. I hadn't heard the results, but I think they tell the story very well of what's going on and why we're in this position right now. And I would say, I should also say with Meryl on the line that Connecticut really has partnered with advocacy organizations to hear what's happening in the field. So they're incredible about sharing this data with the office. But this just speaks to the urgency that is here. And I'm grateful that Senator Blumenthal was on. So he can keep the pressure up in DC. Those are, that is not a sustainable business model with more than 60% of programs operating below break even. We've been able to hold on because of the COVID money did exactly what it was designed to do, but it can't continue. The programs can't continue without more federal help. And I should also say the state has put in a good amount of its dollars to in just this fiscal year, we're committing about $21.5 million of additional funding to state-funded centers because they're under-enrolled and they're paid by child. We have the ability to help them with the state appropriation. So we can help them, but, as you heard Veronica say, most programs are private. And so the Build Back Better would help private and public really build a public-private system. So that's why we need that bill to pass, or certainly parts of it to pass, and the child care part is critical.
Veronica is still with us, again, Director of MySchool in East Hampton. Veronica, you shared a little about how you're trying to be creative in these trying times to stay open, to still serve families that are able to keep their children enrolled. The COVID surge hopefully will be declining, and so what do you anticipate in the next couple of months for your child care center as we talk about this federal legislation that's stalled right now?
Well, we're putting out all the surveys to find out if we're going to be able to keep chugging along. One of the things that's interesting is to people who are in the know and realize what a great asset it is to have the kids come to preschool before they get into their kindergarten, learning how they're scaffolding off what they learn here and the social and the emotional, that during the summer, we're going to try to offer some more formal preschool programs as opposed to just recreational, so that we can kind of catch up for some lost time. So we're trying to keep our mission of giving a good foundation to the kids to get them going through their next 12 years. At the same time, it's hard to be proactive when you're backpedaling, and we need that funding. I can't say it enough.
Well, Veronica, thank you for coming on the show and reaching out to us a couple of weeks ago to talk about this issue in so many communities. And keep in touch with us. Let us know how you're doing and how you're faring over the next few months. Thanks for your time today. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Beth Bai will stay with us. She's Commissioner of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. And we want to hear from you. What have been your experiences finding childcare in your town? Has it been a struggle to keep your child enrolled? You can join us, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Have you struggled to find childcare or keep your children enrolled with a childcare provider during the pandemic? We want to hear from you. 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. There are several reasons the childcare industry is struggling, from shortages of workers to fewer enrollments due to the pandemic. Families are dealing with illnesses and long quarantines. Others have lost income and can't afford childcare. Earlier, we heard from the owner of a private child care center. Now, what are the local solutions to bolster child care in our state? With us on Zoom is Beth. She's Commissioner of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. Commissioner Bai, we talked about some of the reasons why the market is broken, something you've also said, because parents can't afford to pay what it costs for childcare. Childcare providers aren't paid what they deserve. And so I'm wondering if you can talk more about some of the solutions that your office and others have come up with in terms of boosting childcare options in towns, including getting more family childcare providers up and running.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Well, we, at the very beginning of the pandemic, when, the governor did not shut down childcare, but many closed temporarily, family childcare, as a rule, mostly stayed open. They were very small settings. These settings are in people's homes. It's 6 or fewer children, 9 with after-school kids, but generally very small groups. And these providers stayed open. And the Early Childhood Funders Collaborative reached out to me and said, maybe we could expand what's happening to support family childcare at this time, because, they're tiny businesses, fragile, and they were an important part of the childcare infrastructure for those critical workers that were working in the pandemic. And so we worked with 4CT and were able to get $1 million to expand from 5 to 12 staff family childcare networks. And family childcare networks, Erica can give you even more details, but they are incredible resources to these small businesses. They help them with supporting quality. They help them figure out how to get licensed if they want to expand, and help them with their businesses. How do we run a small business? So we knew, and also we supplied some nurse support to these programs throughout the early pandemic. So this was a really good idea, and we had been piloting it for a couple of years, but the pandemic, we said we've really got to get more supports out there. And that has led to us, though we've lost some family childcare capacity, really very little, especially as compared to the 10 years prior. So we think these networks have been critical, and Erica's on from AllOurKin. They're really one of the innovators in this space, and we've learned from them and from the other 4 pilots, and we're able to partner with family resource centers and get these in 12 parts of the state to really support these programs.
When we look at the state and where you have identified, or others have identified, what I guess would be considered child care deserts, how did you use data to think about where to better fund and help these providers?
Yes, we really did use data with our stabilization efforts because we already had deserts. We couldn't afford to lose supply in some of those highest need communities. So we used the social vulnerability index that was being used with vaccine. This is where, COVID gives some innovation. And that helped us get down to the census tract level to see where the highest needs were. And programs that had a high social vulnerability score got 35% more funding, 25% or 35%, depending on how high a need that census tract was, because we knew those programs needed more support and we couldn't lose them. And family childcare is really filling a gap in some of those deserts. And so they also got the bonus if a family childcare home was in a high need area. So we did use data to inform, and it's given us lessons going forward, even as we think about developing, a more supported early childhood system in Connecticut, combining the UPK and childcare and Build Back Better and the existing systems in Connecticut.
When we talk about child care options for families, it's common for parents to look up accredited child care centers. And, when we think about family child care providers, and these are people that have small businesses out of their home, the ratio is much smaller, as you mentioned, I think 6 kids. And And I'm wondering if you can talk through those options, because something that Veronica had said earlier in the show is, the importance of early childhood. And sometimes people, they don't think about this as a vital time for children to have that kind of interaction, and the importance of having people who are trained in early childhood development. So talk through those options and
Sure.
And how, when you think about boosting the family child care providers, how you license them, and how this is a credible option for people.
Yeah, I really appreciate that question, Lucy. I think you could ask any kindergarten teacher and they would tell you they can absolutely tell the difference between a child that's had high quality early childhood and a child that has not. They're learning social skills, they're learning those executive function skills, to wait their turn, to help others. They're learning, early literacy and early numeracy, and early childhood professionals are the most incredible people. I'm sure there are thousands of people listening who will back that up. And they really encourage, they really work directly with parents too. So it's a wonderful support. Those first 5 years can be very isolated for parents, and those early childhood providers really provide important support to families, and also just sort of to gauge, how's my child doing? You see them in a classroom. And high quality early childhood is very much play-based, and it can happen in the context of a home. Family childcare home is a wonderful option for families, and often more flexible with changing work times. And child care and preschools centers are really great options for families too. And we do in Connecticut we've given additional funds as well to programs that are NAEYC accredited or meet Head Start standards, as a way to, again, preserve those high quality settings. And family child care homes can be accredited too, and we're working to support them to get accredited. But we also pay more if a family child care home owner has a child development associate or other degrees in early childhood. And many of them do, very many do. So family child care is a really good options, I think, sometimes that families don't think about. But Build Back Better is designed to be center-based, family childcare, and public preschool. It's really a complex system. But I will say the superintendents in Connecticut have been super engaged, understanding how important early childhood is, and really concerned about what they saw this year and last year when so many children came without those experiences. It's really affected the kindergarten classrooms and even onto first grade classrooms. So it takes all of us, it's going to take all parts of the system to support families and children in those early years. And the brain is both very vulnerable at those ages, and also there's great potential in those early years in the brain development. And I think high quality early childhood settings and early childhood providers help families land on the side of great potential.
Just to be fully transparent, I used family home child care providers for both of my children. And when I was researching, and this can impact people too when you're thinking about budgets, often these family child care providers, they're less expensive than what some of these private child care centers are charging per week. And can you talk about that, Commissioner Bai, about the different options there for families who are struggling?
Yeah, there really are different options. And also there's, for families that are struggling with affording childcare, the governor has significantly expanded the child care subsidy system, which is Care for Kids. So parents can go to 211 online. United Way of Connecticut is our partner there, and 211 will help you locate childcare in your area, and also has a little benefits calculator that will make it easy for you to see, would I qualify for help with childcare, whether it's in a family home or a center. It helps both places. And that expansion has expanded to workforce development, which people in workforce development or in school didn't used to be able to get any childcare subsidy in Connecticut. And the governor has signed some of the federal funds to support people that want to take that next step or first step, but have children and need childcare. So there are good options. And I think more centers now have flexible days, and family child care homes can be flexible. That's another way to reduce the costs, is to say, I'll send my child 3 days a week based on my work schedule, et cetera. But know that whether it's a center or a family child care home, you want a licensed program. And the Office of Early Childhood will be doing an unannounced visit every year to every program. So you know that you're getting that when you sign up for a licensed program.
Unfortunately, we're still in this pandemic and this surge, and I'm wondering, when we think about the updated public health guidance, what resources your office provides for family child care providers as well.
Yes. Well, we have supported family child care homes with the nurse line, as I said, and also the network supply them with different kinds of supports as well. And also there were periods of time when we simply paid Care for Kids during the pandemic to help programs that were reliant on families with Care for Kids to attend at times when the enrollment was down, to try to help that way. But I think the networks you're going to hear from Erica offer a lot of help. And we've also partnered with Connecticut Women's Business Development Center to provide small grants and business supports to family child care homes and centers as well.
But as far as the concerns, because children 4 and under aren't able to get the vaccine, and so we're hearing, some providers will.
Yeah,
it's okay. Some providers will.
Let me get on that. It has been incredibly difficult on the public health side of things for programs. The past month, the early phases of the pandemic, there were not many cases in child care. And now there have been many classroom closures. It's incredibly difficult for families. We have worked with Department of Public Health to issue guidance and then update that guidance as the CDC updates the guidance. We sent out new guidance last evening to just try to be clear, and we encourage programs to work with their local health departments as well, because the thing about a pandemic is it's also unpredictable. So every case is very different, every exposure is different. And so often programs need to lean on local health. Because we are sort of the education and operations organization, and we work closely with DPH and local health to support those needs. But it's been really difficult. We've been trying to get guidance out and be clear about the guidance, but that takes time, to vet through the process. So we're trying to keep it as up to date as possible.
And questions about quarantining, whether it's 10 days or 5 days, and some places requiring the 10, Commissioner Bai?
Yeah, and again, we offer guidance that we've updated now, where if children can consistently wear a mask, it's a 5-day quarantine. But for those ages where they can't, it's 10 days. And where we changed a little bit over the past week is children 3 and under do not need to wear masks in childcare, but for those 2 to 3 who can reliably mask, we're saying now they can come back after 5 days if they can consistently wear a mask to prevent the spread of COVID. And we all hope this is coming to an end soon. Nobody prefers young children wearing masks, but we have been able to reduce the spread of COVID in these group settings. And so we all look forward to the day that we don't have to, but right now vaccines and masks are great tools, and young children can't be vaccinated. So the masks become an even more important tool there.
Beth Bai again is Commissioner of the Connecticut Office of Early Childhood. Thank you for your time today, and I have a feeling we'll be talking again.
Yeah, it's always so nice to be with you, Lucy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You're listening to Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. We're going to continue talking about childcare after the break. You can join us too. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live on Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. We're talking about childcare today and how to support the industry that's so vital for many American families. Later today, U.S. Senators Richard Blumenthal and Chris Murphy will be in West Hartford to talk about, to talk with childcare staff, rather, about the challenges they're seeing, including the impact of this recent COVID surge. Both Blumenthal and Murphy support immediate federal assistance to help providers and families pay for childcare. Joining us now on the phone is Erica Phillips, president of AllOurKin, a national nonprofit based out of New Haven that supports family child care educators. Erica, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Lucy. Thank you for raising this important topic.
We heard Commissioner Bai talk about how pivotal family child care providers have been in this pandemic. Can you talk about the role of AllOurKin plays in this community to support families?
Absolutely. For more than 20 years, AllOurKin has been training, supporting, and sustaining family child care educators. Through our innovative model, we see a triple win. First, providers become more successful small business owners. Second, families have flexible, high-quality child care options. And third, and most importantly, children are prepared for their next steps, both educationally and social-emotionally.
Who are the people we're talking about? Are they often women of color that are providing this care in communities? And what is that has been the impact on them during this surge, and how they're able to continue to operate?
Absolutely. So 95% are women, and over 40% are Black or Latinx. We also have a significant number of providers who immigrated from other countries. There are many languages spoken amongst the providers that we work with, and so it's a very, very diverse group. It represents one of the most racially diverse and unfortunately, lowest paid sectors of the teaching workforce.
You've been in this field for more than 20 years. We know that childcare has been underfunded long before the pandemic, and so we heard about the need for additional federal funding. Can you talk about that and what you're hearing from your community at AllOurKin?
Absolutely. This has been an incredibly tough time. As Commissioner Bai talked about, family child care educators have really been the unsung heroes of the pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, over 2/3 of the programs we work with stayed open. Currently, most of them are open. However, half of them within the last month have had to temporarily shut down for 1 to 2 weeks because they had COVID or a child in their program had COVID. And so this is such a difficult time right now. One provider talked about the emotional toll that COVID has taken now going into almost our third year. They're serving as the child care provider, the parents, the social workers, psychologists, teachers, tech, everything. It's just been a really difficult time. And we want to just let them know that the world does know the role that they're playing.
When we talk about these challenges because of COVID, what has that meant for enrollment for these family child care providers?
Absolutely. That has been very difficult. Many of them have had to temporarily close, and when they do that, families might make a decision to go to another program because families also need childcare. And so there's been a lot of instability, a lot of movement between programs. Most of them are not enrolled, and earlier, Meryl from the Early Child Alliance talked about 60% of the programs are not at break even. We see that in the home-based family child care where they're under-enrolled and the cost of expenses have went up, and so they're definitely struggling financially right now.
So what keeps them doing this, Erica, when we hear about these disruptions, the fact that, pay isn't great in early childhood, and they're struggling to figure out how to continue to be open? Are people thinking about other careers at this point?
Unfortunately, yes, they are. The educators we work with, they got into this because they love working with children. They love supporting families, and they are continuing to go above and beyond. However, I was talking with a provider, actually a nationally accredited provider from Bridgeport, who had an amazing program, and she decided that she needed to close her program, and she's now working at Amazon because she needed the benefits and the stability for her family. It's just a really unfortunate time. Most providers are staying in the field. They are there for their families and using resources that the Office of Early Childhood is putting out. The grants that Connecticut got out really quickly were very helpful, but we do need more now as we're going into another wave. Educators are just mentally exhausted and they're physically strained.
There's a woman in West Haven, Bernadette Engo, who's a family child care provider. I believe she might be part of the AllOurKin community as well, but she testified at a Senate hearing about the need for more funding. How is she still operating today, Erica?
Bernadette is still open and caring for children. Recently, Bernadette talked about a story where there was a family whose child was sick and unable to go to the program. And even though she relied on the income from that family, she couldn't charge them because she knew that they didn't have the funds to pay for childcare while their child is sick. And so that's just one of the ways in which all of the providers are going above and beyond. But Bernadette is still open and still doing everything she can do to make ends meet. One of the things I will say is the community that they have, the support that AllOurKin provides, that the other family child care providers provide each other is a lifeline. And, we're just working together to try and be there for families and the community.
You mentioned the lifeline, so thinking about helping them with emotional support, self-care, stress management, that's really important right now.
Absolutely. We often will go on Facebook Live and just connect when people are in their homes and they're not able to see another adult all day with just the children. We'll give calls. Our team is calling the providers all the time to check in on them to make sure that they got the latest information. They're dropping off supplies and just being a listening ear to the providers across the state and offering any resources and support that we can.
You've been hearing Erica Phillips here on Where We Live, president of AllOurKin, a national nonprofit based out of New Haven that supports family child care educators. Erica, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Today's show is produced by Katie Pellico. I'm Lucy Nalpathanchel. Coming up tomorrow, music schools in Philadelphia denied her admission because she was black. So did a segregated concert hall, leading to a fight for civil rights. On the next Where We Live, did you know the great opera singer Marian Anderson lived and sang in Danbury? We'll learn about her life, and we'll talk about the lack of diversity in opera to this day. You can join us that conversation tomorrow.